Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is Brian Eskow, and this is Searching for Political Identity. I'm thrilled to be with you today. I'm glad that you're here. Particularly excited for this one because my guest was Marianne Williamson. She is a visionary political leader, a prolific author, and a deep thinker. So, in other words, exactly the type of guest that I dreamed of connecting with. When I started this podcast 3.5 years ago during my final year of law school, while studying critical race theory and developing profound questions about my political identity. So, this was a dream. This was really a dream come true in so many ways. Extraordinary conversation. I'm still digesting it, and I'll be reflecting on it for many weeks, I predict. But we talked, of course, about the political climate, how she was treated by the Democrats in her recent run for president, Donald Trump, and so much more. So there's a lot to chew on here. This is one for the deep thinkers. Marianne Williamson, thank you so much for joining me. And audience, I hope you get as much out of it as I did. Thank you all, and I'll see you next. Welcome.
Thank you. And I'm honored to be here.
Yeah.
There's no up or down.
You have no pretense. You have no pretense, and I know it's genuine. So I didn't mean to be over the top with my enthusiasm, but it's all genuine, all good. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I know you as a visionary leader, a political candidate, presidential candidate, but that's really all I know. And I see you on X. Now I'm on X, and I say, wow, this woman has the goods. She leads with the heart. She's got vision. She's bold. She's courageous. She's got conviction. That's the way you do it, and I really like it. And I think, just as an aside, I think you could have beaten Trump. I think you can beat Trump, someone like you. That's the mold. That's the model. So I believe in what you're doing, even if I don't necessarily know for sure if I believe in everything that you believe in. I think you've got the right approach for sure. But so I'd love to talk to you about the political climate, and you're seeking your guidance and all of that. But I want to start. I couldn't believe, in doing just a little research for this, I could not believe that you are the author of this quote. And of course, you know what I'm going to get to, because it's maybe it must be your most famous quote of all time. I don't know how I got exposed to it. I didn't read your book as a kid, but it made its way to me, and it's always been in my heart. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. I mean, I could go on with the longer version of that quote. So relevant. So I'm on a journey. I'm looking for purpose, for meaning, for identity. And so it's awesome to talk to you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So my first question is, why do we have an interest in politics? Why care about politics at all? I'm going through that sometimes, because I always used to think, I got these uncles who are interested in politics. I relate to my dad through politics. It's interesting. It's stimulating. But then you go, man, is it really worth being that invested? So why is politics important?
Well, on one hand, it's so toxic today. It's such a painful realm. It's so mean-spirited that I understand why anyone says, I don't want anything to do with it. It's a cesspool. It's so adversarial. It's so bitter. It's so mean. It's so corrupt. So those are all the reasons why any reasonable person would say, I'm out of here for my own peace of mind and quality of life.
Right.
At the same time, politics is nothing more than our collective behavior. And whether we like it or not, we are citizens of, if not the most, certainly now with the multipolar world, certainly one of the most powerful countries in the world. And for better or for worse, we have tremendous impact. Also, we're living at a time domestically where no one except a tiny few could claim that things are going well. The tiny few would claim that things are going well because for them, it's going well. But for the vast majority of people, there's this increasing sense something's wrong. Now, for the vast majority of people, that has to do, as much as with anything else, with a deep sense of economic injustice, that in policy after policy, a few are enabled in their efforts at wealth creation, but that is at the expense of the vast majority of people who feel on some level locked in. People want more than jobs. They want dignity. They want a meaningful life. They want to feel that this job could be a career. So many people, even who are working, or working at jobs maybe that they just have to have because it's the only way they could get health benefits or whatever. There are young people who feel a hopelessness now that young people when I was growing up did not feel. Many of them still living with their parents. And I've talked to so many people for whom it's not just an issue that the child, and remember how many of these young people went to school, got a degree. Not only are the kids not able to get out there, get on their own, get married if they want to, think about having a house, having children, but it's also some of their parents and grandparents who I've heard say to me, I did not plan my retirement thinking my kids were still going to be on my dole. So there's just so much economic anxiety. And then even for the people for whom the economic anxiety is not there, the sense of spiritual malaise, psychological and emotional disconnection, anxiety, depression is there no matter who we are. So there's such a sense that something has gone wrong. So people don't know, well, where do I go? Now, when I was growing up, you went to the political party that you felt best expressed your sense of values and your sense of what should happen in the United States. And when I was growing up, there was still a sense, whether it was organized religion or whatever, whether it was your education, whether it was your therapy, whether it was your religious or spiritual practice, that there were places to go where truth was spoken, where some hope might lie. Everything now feels so corrupted, but we're going to have to reclaim it. And I say this as someone who not only ran, but took the hits, lived at the effect of that corruption. Nobody needs to tell me how corrupt it is.
It's amazing.
But I don't come out of that experience saying to hell with it. I come out of that experience saying, whatever days I have left on this planet, I'm going to try to transform the system, because if we don't, it's going to implode. And then you ask yourself, well, what will that look like? Well, it will look catastrophic, if not just for us, then for our children or for our grandchildren. So the times we're living in are difficult. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say, Thomas Paine's line, these are times that try men's souls. It's a painful moment, but I'll tell you something. It's helpful to remember you're not the only one in pain. Yeah. You're not the only one in pain. There, and also not only that you're not the only one in pain, you're not the only one yearning for a way to make things better. And I don't think that this particular campaign, how this has gone down, is helping to create more hope. It's actually just made it more
cynical. It's adding to the cynicism.
Now, for some people, oh, rah-rah, the rah-rah is there on both sides. But I think the deepest thinkers and the deepest feelers aren't feeling rah-rah. We're
Amen.
just praying that it goes down okay. I'm not just worried about November 5th. I'm worried about November 6th. Because somebody's going to win. And in this election, I grew up at a time, listen, not like we weren't without tumult and turbulence and drama and even violence. But there was still an understanding your guy or girl may or may not win, but it's our system that you are going to surrender to the results and open yourself psychologically and intellectually, not just politically, because you might not politically, you might be in major disagreement with who won, but you will recognize that democracy prevailed, somebody won, and it is your job to the best of your ability to at least support their exercise of the position in a way that will be good for everyone. My concern is how many people who, if Kamala wins, won't give it to her. And to a certain extent, if Trump wins, it's not like there's not going to be a lot of at least emotional and psychological drama on the other side as well. So we're living in very serious times, and we need to be very serious people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are wondering how you could come out of the process that you just came out of with such a lack of ego, a lack of spite. So it's a testament
Oh, I have
to
my
how serious
moments.
you are. Well, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. But it's not the message you're giving me.
No, because you work it. You know, I don't feel I was treated fairly, but I made my own mistakes.
Hmm.
And even in some of the places where I wasn't treated fairly, if I had behaved a certain way, it wouldn't have been so easy. I'll give you an example. And this was true last time too, but these awful false narratives about me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Tulsi Gabbard wrote a book and she talked about the playbook by which they get rid of people that they don't want to be in the conversation. She's absolutely right. But one of the things that she says is they define you before you have a chance to define yourself. Well, they did define me. She's crazy, crystal lady. She told AIDS patients not to take their medicine. She's awful. On the other hand, I did not do enough work at the beginning to talk about the things I'd done with my life. So they were able to come in with what new age author. I love how this year it became self-help author. They wouldn't even give it to me that I was an author. Plus a lot of things that were not my fault at all, but enough things that were unwise on my part. You have to take responsibility for that. And also I think the universe is always ready to begin again, but not if you hold on to resentment, anger, bitterness. That deflects the new beginning.
That's the wisdom.
And I want to be present with what is. You know, you were saying something before we came on, and you were talking about, you refer to your future, and I got to figure out, and I was thinking when you spoke, just be with where you are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the mind is always, you know, on the past. The mind is always on the future. The place of power is in the present. You know, John O'Donohue wrote a poem that I heard quoted at a funeral recently. And the line has something to do with finding the insight in every situation.
Right.
What's the insight? What's the insight? Whether something went well or something didn't go well, what's the insight? And I think going back to politics in general, there's so much insight that we need. You know, it's so easy to just jump on Twitter and be mean to somebody. It's harder to go deep. You know, what happened in the beginning? What did the founders say? What did the Declaration of Independence say? What was the Civil War about? What was abolition about? What was women's suffrage about? What was the Gilded Age and the establishment of labor about? What was segregation of the civil rights movement about? What happened when Reagan came in? Exactly what is trickle-down economics? What happened? Where is the Republican Party gone? Where is the Democratic Party gone? It's so easy to just flail. I understand why so many people are upset. And I understand, you know, the cynicism and the nihilism and the anger that can breed in these waters, but that's a way of giving up. You can't indulge that for too long at a time, anyway. You can't indulge the part of you that wants to spew it and also be a real transformational element. I mean, when you think of our history, it could not have been easy. It wasn't easy to be a woman suffragist. They threw those women in jail. What isn't easy to be an abolitionist? I mean, and I don't say this like, come on, just do it. I don't have that at all, but I'm saying these aren't easy times, but we have to rise to meet them.
What do you see as the principal challenges of our time?
The sensible challenges?
Principal.
Oh, the principal challenges. The principal challenges is that our democracy is being destroyed by the undue influence of money. And the influence of huge corporate interests is not only corrupting our politics. You know, the late Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said, you can have large amounts of money concentrated in the hands of a very few, or you can have democracy, you cannot have both. Those corporate interests have turned our government into a system of legalized bribery. But it's not even just the malevolent influence of a kind of unfettered, soulless economic system that puts its own profits before people, before the environment, before animals, before the quality of life. That has not only infested our politics, it's infested our society. There's almost no aspect of American society not at the effect of this. Almost, it's like a parasitic plague, and everybody knows it. But there are no like 5 easy steps to turn this around. It's going to take changes on the inside and changes on the outside, because we not only have to address the huge political and economic factors. That's hard enough given how locked up our major political parties have become, but also the effects of it. It's made all of us angry, depressed, anxious, fearful, chronically on edge, whatever. Now, somebody might be listening and saying, I don't feel that way at all. And many hours of the day, I don't feel that way either. But it's there, it's in the air, it's in the ethers. And even like on days that we're really happy, it's because we've transcended all these things. And that has to do with our therapy, our spiritual practice, our religious practice, etc., which has to do with, can I be a more loving person? Can I be a more forgiving person? Can I remember that this other person is in pain too? Can I give someone the benefit of the doubt? Can I just have a little mercy? Can I give a little more? Can I be a little more generous? Can I reach out? Can I be living less and grasping for what I want and living more in a place of might I give other people what they need? Martin Luther King said, in order to change the world, we're going to need quantitative changes in our circumstances, but also qualitative changes in our souls. So I think it's a moment of, I'm a big student of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and political nonviolence. I wrote a book called Healing the Soul of America, which is about those things. And political nonviolence is very much about the fact that who we are when we do something is as important as what we do, because whatever we do is infused with the consciousness with which we do it. As Gandhi said it, the end is inherent in the means. In politics, the smugness, the self-righteousness, to me, and arrogance is as evident on the left as on the right. Mm-hmm. So we all have to, and I also think that there's such a mean-spirited moment, which is a product of all this. And that which perpetuates all this too. But we have to look at it in ourselves and monitor ourselves more and other people less.
Yeah, it sounds like really good advice. And do you think would that potentially lead someone to one political conclusion or another? Like, is there a right or a wrong? Because
I used to think so, but I don't think so anymore. It's so interesting. All of my mind has been blown by what I've seen over the last year and a half. I think those labels and those silos are so destructive right now. Eisenhower said that the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative. And when I was growing up, I'm old enough now to say, I'm so old, I remember. But I think part of being older is you're the keeper of the story. When you're younger, you know more what's happening now. That's your value. But when you're older, your value is, but I remember how it was, and it's relevant because these things keep repeating themselves. I think there's a profound intergenerational dialogue that matters. So there was once a sense in this country that there was a golden mean, at least in my lifetime. There was a golden mean. And then there were these fringe people on the outside. I'll give you an example. Nobody, when I was younger, thought that there weren't racist, bigots, homophobes, anti-Semites, and so forth in this country. But there seemed to be, and then we had on the left, people who were just anarchists and wanting to destroy everything, whatever. Everybody understood that such people exist. We're not perfect. But there was a sense that there was a space held, mainly by the political parties, where a major political megaphone was not going to be handed to people in far extreme places. But what happened is, number one, social media. Social media, right there, all the guardrails came down. Mm-hmm. Because anybody can have a platform.
Right.
Now, I personally believe, this is just my personal opinion, I respect that not everyone agrees with this. As I see it, there is a malignant, narcissistic political figure who began to stoke some of the worst impulses of the American mind for his own political purposes. And so now it's like all hell's broken loose. And also both major political parties who seem less convinced or committed to standing on their own principles, traditional principles, than ongoing wherever their electoral success might be increased. So I think both major political parties have sacrificed their souls and their commitment to things that matter most over the last few decades. Now, some people would hear what I just said and say, "Oh, I can't believe she's both sides, doing. I can't believe she's talking like there's a moral equivalent." No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we can still have a mature conversation.
Right.
This is not a black and white moment. Mm-hmm. This idea, whether you're talking about Israel, whether you're talking about American politics or anything else, this idea that, no, they're all good and they're all bad.
Right.
It's not that way. I can definitely point out the malfeasance of the Democratic Party, which I know firsthand. I know viscerally. And still say, yeah, I'm voting for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Why? Because I think it's really, really important that Donald Trump not be president again.
Mm-hmm.
No, Marianne, people say to me, you have to enthusiastically endorse her. Actually, I think there's a lot of us for whom, I'm going to vote the way I feel I need to vote, but that doesn't mean I'm going to close my eyes to things that are happening that are going to have to transform, or the whole system is going to implode.
Yeah, close your mind or your heart. I mean,
that's
you
right.
don't just
being just out of your own integrity. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve you as a person with, I don't mean to be cute here, but as a mature, enlightened, if I might say, a leader. It doesn't serve you in that role to do those things, and it doesn't make sense. It's not persuasive. So why would
that's an interesting thing. It's not persuasive either. It's not. Yeah. I mean, people know bullshit when they hear it. Too many people don't know bullshit when they hear it. But I think a lot of people do know bullshit when they hear it.
My thing would be to say, hey, if Kamala Harris could do is to list 3 things that she respects about what Trump did. Can you list 3? Surely you could list 3 things, or maybe 1 or 2. Say something nice about his followers. One thing, certainly you can find some humanity in that side and treat them with respect. That's why I like what Kennedy did, and I know you did it too. You absolutely did it too. You don't disparage the other side. You say, I have my beliefs.
Well, I don't believe. Well, Kamala Harris is running against Donald Trump. I don't think it's her job or to her benefit to list 3 things she likes about him right now.
Gotcha. Okay,
actually, maybe he's the one calling her, comrade.
Yeah,
I think he's found his nicknames: Comrade Kamala and Tampon Tim.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, my thing still would be to say, can you continuously rise above? Keep rising above. And
I can't fault her for that. I think that she's.
Right. Yeah, not to lob a criticism at her. I'm just saying generally, though, that's the type of approach that I think would be helpful. But maybe if someone was calling me Tampon Brian, then maybe I wouldn't be able to do it either. Is there something ironic about Trump? This sense that, because the way I hear you say it, it sounds to me like you would say he's a symptom and not the main disease. So is there something ironic? Is there any values, kind of what I was getting at just a second ago, is there any value to this man and his political movement and his president? Is there anything there that makes sense? Or is it all just, hey, he latched on in a Machiavellian way, if that's even the right description, to this angst and tension, and he has used it to his advantage? Or is there something there?
It doesn't make sense to me, but I respect that to some people it does make sense.
Hmm. Right.
To me, there are a few things he says sometimes where I go, he might have a point on that one. But to me, there's an overriding issue, which is profound lack of respect for the pillars of our democracy, for the role of the presidency, how he sees exercising that role. He's unabashed in his declaration that basically, he wants to fire people who aren't loyal to him. I remember early on in his presidency, who are civil servants who normally just continue on no matter who the president is. I remember early on in his presidency last time, there was a video they put out with his cabinet members, and you would have thought we were in North Korea, like dear leader. Do you remember that?
No.
Them all talking about how wonderful he was and how wonderful it was to work for him. I thought I was watching a hostage video. So no, even when he says things about which I go, he might have a point on that one. That stuff, it's beyond, during Nixon, they talked about the imperial presidency. This is more like a monarchical view of the presidency. So no, and his obvious pathological line. So that even when he's saying something and I think to myself, that's probably true, there are other things that we know are lost. The character of the man, the hatefulness of the man towards certain people. Now, the people I know, and I know some wonderful people who support him, say, Marianne, that's just theater. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about theater. Just look at his policies. I can't do that because I believe your character affects everything. So
how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Well, even if it's how you do some things, the fact that I can't trust that there's at least a consistent effort to be a good person. It's interesting for me because I remember who he was when I would see him in interviews like in the 1980s, and he seemed so different. He was a man in the 1980s, if you see old interviews with him, if you had said to me, Marianne is going to be president someday, I would have said, oh, but I wouldn't have been appalled. He seems so different now.
That's interesting.
So different now. The anger, the mean-spiritedness. Now, I have some serious problems with the way the Democratic Party establishment works now too. However, we have to take on the immediate issues, and the immediate issues have to do with policies that affect people's lives on a daily basis. And there, to me, there's really no contest with Kamala Harris as opposed to Donald Trump. I feel that the working class American is going to have a much greater shot at raising their children, at getting educated, at having some fairness, at being able to form a union, at being able to have even a shot at the American dream. That's my belief, and that's why I'm going to vote for her, despite other ways in which I'm appalled by how that system operates.
Yeah, it's amazing that the man who famously urinates in golden toilets has become a figurehead of the working class. I mean, what do you make of this identity shift? Tell me about this.
Okay, this is the thing. The Republicans stand for the elitist policies, but in a weird, ironic way, have a more egalitarian relationship to their own constituency. The Democrats have the more egalitarian policies, for the most part, but a more elitist, paternalistic attitude towards their own constituency. Remember, I wasn't even given a ticket to the convention. You have to, it's almost absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, how absurd is that?
It's
I ran
it's
as a
sad. Yeah.
Democrat. I got 500,000 votes,
Right. You
but
didn't bail. You didn't bail.
she doesn't toe the line. She
Yeah.
doesn't toe the line. I mean, we used to say that the Republicans fell in line and the Democrats fall in love. Now the Republicans fall in love and the Democrats fall in line. But
They
let's
must
go
be so
back
scared
to
of you. They must be so scared that inviting you to the convention would, oh, there's Marianne. It would just blow wind in your sails, and they don't want that. That must be the reason.
I don't think they're scared of me now. And at this point, I'm just a nuisance and just make sure she goes away. But at the beginning, yes, I think that they were threatened by anybody entering into the conversation around the presidency that was not completely towing the line with where which in their elitist and paternalistic view, the Democratic Party needed to go. But let's go back a little bit. In the 2017 tax cut, $2 trillion, 83 cents of every dollar went to the richest corporations and the richest individuals. It completely fostered inflation. It will never pay for itself, and it fosters income inequality. But the issue is that other 17 cents. So what he did, he's very shrewd. Every time he does something, which he constantly does, this is Donald Trump now, to foster corporatism, to foster corporate corruption, to foster this real disintegration of the very idea that we are to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, he's smart enough and shrewd enough to throw crumbs to his base. So if I were president, if I were a Democratic lawmaker, I'd be standing strong for the repeal of that 2017 tax cut, but for the reintroduction of the middle class tax cut. That middle class tax cut should have been done by Obama. So there are many people in America who are now saying, I'm better off economically. I'm not even talking about just rich people who are saying I'm better off economically. And what frustrates me, Brian, is that the Democratic Party is not doing enough to explain why that is. In so many cases, actually, not only not Joe Biden's fault, but even to the extent to which it's true, is actually a legacy of Donald Trump policies. But one thing you have to say for Trump is he has a conversation with people. And the Democrats...
That feeds into what you were saying about they're a little more pretentious, they're a little more elitist. He's willing to just go for it, yeah, and sit down. And
or at least they're smart enough. I'm not saying that the people who run the Republican Party are any less elitist, but at least they're smart enough to keep it behind closed doors.
They're folks here. They've got a way about connecting with.
They know, yeah. They're. Whereas the Democrats, I don't know. You know, at this point, Brian, it's hard because right now we have to get through November 5th, and I really hope that Donald Trump does not win. And for that reason, I'm voting for Kamala. And therefore, there are a lot of things that I could say and would say, but will not say until after November 6th.
No, fair enough. Absolutely fair. It makes total sense. So is there a sea change happening in American politics?
Oh, there's a sea change happening on a profound level, on a historic level. The problem, however, is that we don't know yet in which direction. This thing's going to fall. This thing's going like this right now. It's going like this right now. The problem is, and it's not about is it going to fall to the left or fall to the right. The issue is it going to fall in the direction of democracy? Is it going to fall in the direction of a rebirth of freedom, as Abraham Lincoln called it? We are not now functioning as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We're functioning as a government of the donors, by the lobbyists, and for the corporations. And, you know, it's like that Princeton study that came out that said we're not functionally a democracy, we are functionally an oligarchy. And so the American people, this goes back to what you and I were first saying, I think the American people are waking up to this, on the left and on the right. The problem is, where do you go to fix it? Where do you go to fix it?
Wow.
I think that, once again, I'm going to vote for Kamala because because it's in the short term, we have it's more for the people. But if the Democratic Party thinks that it's tough, we need there is something trying to be born here. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to come from either place.
Right. No one seems to be nurturing it.
Well, but there's a yearning for it, let me tell you. Because when I was running, and I felt this in 2020 as much as this year, when you actually get out there, when you actually talk to the American people, that's not where the problem lies.
Right.
People are smart, people are decent. People don't want to feel just defined as right or left. People know that it's not left versus right, it's powerful versus powerless. They're not stupid. And they want to hear some common sense spoken about this. But if both parties are inhospitable to that deeper conversation, it's going to have to emerge from somewhere else. Now, Jill Stein, of course, you have your third party voices. Mm-hmm. Jill, Cornell, there was Bobby before. The money, it's so obscene. People look at what's happening in our government. They say, why don't they pass laws that help the average person more? That's because the average person can't get in there. It's so prohibitive. And then you see how when the quote unquote average person gets in there, how easily they get sucked into the system so that maybe you can run in 28 or 32 or 36. It's right. So corrupt, right?
Tantalizing.
Okay. But if you run as an independent, which was Bobby Kennedy's whole point, it's even more obscene. And it is true that it's wrong what they did to him. And it is true it's wrong what they're doing to Jill Stein. That she earned the money, which by law, she is due something like $250,000 for the public funds that gives if she gets a certain percentage, and they're just not giving them to her. You win an election, or it should be that you win an election by debating your opponents, not by suppressing your opponents.
Right. That right there, I don't mean to interrupt, but it feels like
I felt. Yeah, and that's why I'm sorry. I have to say, how can you say that, Marianne? Well, I'm sorry. We're going to have a truthful, mature conversation, and many things are true at the same time.
Right.
So, on one hand, I look at the system as it is, and I go, no, we have to have a conversation that emerges, that allows for electoral power, at least the possibility of electoral power that does not now exist. On the other hand, if it's just the construct of a third party, as we feel third party, the ways that third parties are now being suppressed makes that prohibitive. We need a miracle, Brian, because this thing is locked up in so many ways. But it's important to realize abolition came from the Abolitionist Party, and women's suffrage came from the Women's Party. Social Security came from the Socialist Party. So throughout our history, third parties have had an important role to play. George Washington warned us about political parties in his farewell address. He said he feared they would form factions of men more loyal to their party than to their country, and that is so what has happened. So we have to have a deeper conversation about what's real and what's important, and I think this conversation can't be only held with people who agree with you about all the issues. It has to be high-minded conservatives, high-minded liberals, high-minded progressives. And that's really the dream of America. We are many different religions, many different ethnicities, many different perspectives, but we are held together by our common fealty to a set of principles. And that's what we need to remember, and not continue to separate ourselves from other people because they don't agree with us about this or that.
It's really brilliant.
Some of the most deepest, most heartfelt, most mature conversations I've had politically have been with conservatives with whom I do not agree on the issues.
Right. One of the inspirations for me starting this podcast was the documentary called Best of Enemies. It was on Netflix at the time, but it was the William F. Buckley and Gore Vidal debates, and that was the model in a sense for me. Just Fight it out.
They used to talk about how Tip O'Neill used to have a drink at the end of the evening with Ronald Reagan, how the people in the Republicans and Democrats used to all have a drink later in the evening or on the weekends. Those days are over. Now, Matt Taibbi wrote a really good book called Hate, Inc., talking about how all this started with Roger Ailes, and then people on the left figured it out, well, we can do it too. I had an experience many years ago. I was visiting the Capitol. It was when Dennis Kucinich was in Congress. And I was going to have lunch in the congressional dining room with Dennis. Now, at that time, it was during the Clinton impeachment trials. Lindsey Graham, at that time, he's now senator from South Carolina. At that time, he was a congressman from South Carolina. And he was a majorly rabid dog about Bill Clinton during that period. And that's what I knew him from, watching him on television, this constant attacks on Bill Clinton. Okay. So I'm in Washington at that point. I go to meet Dennis. We get onto the elevator. And Dennis, of course, was one of the most far left Congress people. We're getting onto the elevator. I see Lindsey Graham is coming out. And Dennis and Lindsey, hey, Dennis, hey, Lindsey. And they hug. And they're like best friends. The elevator door closes. It's just me and Dennis. And and Dennis said, what's wrong with you? I said, that was Lindsey Graham. I mean, haven't you heard him? What he's been doing, saying, and I'll never forget, maybe I will forget someday, but I haven't forgotten Dennis's response to me. He said, oh, Marianne, that's just on TV. We work together on a lot of things. People just put that on television. And I thought, right. Oh, great. So the toxicity of that kind of stuff is spewed out into the culture. Our children are raised watching that. It started in Matt Taibbi's book. He talks about that television show Crossfire.
Yep.
And then after a certain period of time, that we treat it, and I can tell you from having run, and I say this from someone like every cell of my being, it's a psychological blood sport. Mm-hmm. It's an emotional blood sport. Yeah. And your career is trashed, your personality is trashed, you're lied about, your campaign is infiltrated, your campaign officials, it's really dark.
Right.
And I don't think it's ever been perfect, but I think it has descended now to levels that are our democracy will not survive it if we don't get hold of what's going on.
Yeah, I know a guy who thinks we should go to a lottery system to get the idea being the ordinary person would be better suited to run our government than our elected leaders. And a lot of that comes from his thesis is it would take a sociopath to run in this environment. They're going to destroy you.
Not wrong. Okay, so let's break that down, because on one hand, of course, we're not going to do that. And of course, we're not going to change the Constitution, nor should we. On the other hand, he does have a point that I look around sometimes and I think to myself, if an average person in this room were running things, we certainly would not be worse off.
Right. Exactly.
I found that in my campaign, the whole thing against me was she's not credible and she's not qualified. Well, first of all, who's qualified was determined by the founders and is written in the Constitution. It should not be determined by the George Stephanopoulos or the Jamie Harrisons or anyone else. But it's more than that. It's like my sense is that the people who have been ensconced in that system for too long should be considered less qualified. Mm-hmm. It's why, in the Bible, how Moses couldn't enter the promised land. The archetype there is no one who is has too much memory of the way it was can be a conduit for how it needs to be.
Wow.
And the idea that we should only look to people who are in the car that is driven into this ditch should possibly be the people we should count on to drive us out of this ditch did not make sense to me. And I'm sorry that I was not able, that goes back to, I think, what you and I were saying before about not defining yourself, because I think that if I had defined myself and what my experience has been, I think I could have made a far more credible argument that actually what I've experienced is the experience most needed now.
Yeah, I believed in what you were doing wholeheartedly. Like I said, even without knowledge that I would totally adhere to your platform completely, the way you did it, I believed in it totally. So I'm sorry for what happened to you, but I admire another reason to admire you. The way you're
Thank you.
handling this. It's really something. I have
Thank
one
you.
more substantive question for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
The other day, you posted something to the effect of the 90% have been subject to class warfare for the last 50 years, from the last 10%. I think that seems quite. If it doesn't say, does it? How much of it does it say? Does that say at all? Really? That
50 trillion, $50 trillion. $50
so?
trillion have been transferred from the bottom 90%. And that's just like, research it, Google it.
Yeah.
That's not like opinion. That's just check it out in terms of taxes, in terms of subsidies, how many of the resources have been leached from the public sector. I wrote an article yesterday. Actually, it was printed in Newsweek, but also it's in my Substack. On my Substack, it's some things never really seem to change. I'll send it to you. I should have sent it to
Actually,
you
I read
earlier.
it to you. Yes, I read it
Okay.
yesterday,
Okay.
prior to you posting it on
hmm
Substack. I saw you just put it on
hmm
Substack. Yep.
Yeah, massive transfer of wealth. I mean, we didn't look at all the billionaires we have. In the 1970s, the average American couple could afford a house. That right there. The average American couple could afford a yearly vacation. The average American couple could afford a car. The average American couple could, if they chose, have one parent stay home with their kids. And the average American couple could send their kids to college. That was in the 1970s. I'm old enough to remember, like in my 20s, none of us had any money, but it was almost like, well, that's okay. We all live in a house together, but we had hope in the possibilities for the future. Those are just facts. Those statistics are not true now. So many of the opportunities for quality healthcare, so many of the opportunities for wealth creation, so many of the opportunities economically, so many of the opportunities educationally have now just been moved into the hands of a fewer and fewer people. And the American dream, you could say about every group, like sometimes people will say to me, let's take Black Americans, Marianne. Look at all the Black, we have Black billionaires now. We have many Black millionaires. Yeah, and they are people who have proven they're geniuses. They're musical geniuses. They're sports geniuses. They're intellectual geniuses. We are living at a time, for the most part, I think, not perfectly, but for the most part, I agree that if you're smart enough, talented enough, brilliant enough, amazing enough, attractive enough, whatever, that even if you didn't have rich parents, there's a great probability you can make it in America.
It's a profound statement right there.
You shouldn't have to be any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't have to be any of those things.
That's
I know
really
that's
good.
Vivek Ramaswamy's vision. No,
Yeah.
some people aren't intellectually brilliant. They're not athletically brilliant. They're not musically brilliant. But you know what? They're good people.
Yeah.
And they work hard. And they should, the basic necessities should not be so hard. And they should be able to live in a safe neighborhood and know that their kids can go to a good public school and maybe their kids could get ahead. Wow. They shouldn't be locked in. That's the American dream. Otherwise, you've just formed an aristocracy again.
Yeah, I think that is such a powerful tool to help take me away from, because I like Vivek. I was attracted to Vivek's message coming out of law school, studying critical race theory, being really confused by that and just struggling with it for several different reasons. To hear his message, I thought, oh wow, that's what I'm feeling right now. But it sounds like he's missing something, which is, what about the
which is that he's brilliant. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's not true to say anybody. That's the thing. It's funny. I was on Bill Maher with him, I think, a couple years ago. I like him as a person too, but we went at it on Bill Maher. Yeah. But that is an example of someone you can like his personality. At least, it was before he took on this, dog thing.
Right. Yeah, he sure did. But that to me is the third way, right? To take some of the messaging from Vivek, you can do anything. You're empowered, but also let's not forget about the common man who's struggling, who's going through something, who's working, you know, and trying to live a dignified life. Let's not just forget about them. That's
Because I've had a career, my career for 40 years, working with people in terms of personal transformation, spiritual transformation, living the kind of life that's most likely to attract harmony and good. I understand there's a lot of inner work to be done. But I also, because of my grassroots activism, have seen how many people do everything right, try so hard, and are living in neighborhoods where basically everything's been destroyed. The factories are shuttered. Their fathers or grandfathers could make a living there. Their streets are unsafe. Their water isn't even safe. They need more than an attitude shift. And not only do they need more than an attitude adjustment, they need more than private charity. Right. Because no amount of private charity can compensate for a basic lack of social justice. Those are the people who've been left out. And you know what? Donald Trump is getting many of them because at least he acknowledges they exist. You know, in 2016, two presidential candidates said, "You've been screwed. You've been totally tyrannized by a rigged economic system. Your pain is totally legitimate." Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump.
Right.
And Hillary Clinton came along and said, "Oh, let's continue the success of the last 8 years." Millions of Americans said, "What success, lady? I'm drowning here. Nothing changed for me."
Right.
And so when Bernie was shoved out of the system, and that's what he was, then, you know, a friend of mine said to me about all this one day, not too long ago. He said, people who have no hope will go with false hope rather than no hope. So too many people in the Democratic Party, even when they talk about the middle class, we're going to work with the middle class. First of all, what middle class? The middle class has been basically decimated over the last 50 years. But what about people who are struggling every day just to be able to call themselves middle class? We have so much poverty in this country. We have so much near poverty in this country. And it's not an accident. It is a product of the economic policies that still prevail. So when the Democrats, you know, say, and I'm glad she does, you know, her economic stuff, I like what it is. But it's saying, you know, we need that child tax credit, and how the Democrats have said during that time that it was working, that we cut child poverty in half. If we can cut child poverty in half, we can eradicate child poverty.
Right.
Children going hungry in the United States is unacceptable. That's what I believe we need to address. There are too many people unnecessarily suffering. You know what they say in some neighborhoods in this country? That America is too expensive for Americans. And this isn't just a matter of inflation. It's a matter of tax policy. It's a matter of subsidies. It's a matter of an entire system that caters to those who feed it and ignores those who so need to be fed.
Yeah, it's just so important for me to hear in terms of forming my political identity, to hear you talk in a way you're threading this needle between understanding, because of your experience, your life experience, that there is a fair amount of self-help that people need to do. I'm on that journey as myself. And so part of it, as I go through that, is like, maybe that's just what everyone needs to do. Shoot, I should be a Republican now, because you just need to take responsibility for your life, be accountable. And then that's how you do it. Bottom up, you know, start. But then you also say, just because you recognize that there's a fair amount of self-help that people around this country need to engage in, it doesn't mean that there isn't a huge amount of need for public services. So it's not one or the other.
No, it's the common good. It should be the government should be the broker between individual liberty, which should include economic liberty, and a concern for the common good. What's happened over the last 50 years is there's been this demonization of the even idea of a common good. Oh, that's socialism or communism. No, it's not. It's a concern for the common good. Read the Constitution of the United States. Read the preamble. Wow. What's happened is that it's so much about privatization. I mean, that's what the people like the Koch brothers were about. This is why the economist James Buchanan who got the attention of the Koch brothers, who then got the, Ronald Reagan got their attention. He said, in order to protect the primacy of property rights, we need to put democracy in chains. Yeah. So if property rights is more important to you than democracy, which is, that goes all the way back to slavery. People seeing other people as their property, women as someone's property. Right. The earth is just someone's property to be used for utilitarian purposes. Right. So you have to balance property rights with humanitarian and democratic ideals, which need to be our bottom line. People can still get rich, but you shouldn't, morally, there's something wrong about getting rich at the expense of other people ever getting a shot at it. That's the American dream. Right. That everybody should get a shot at it. Now, if you have children, as we do have millions of American children, who go to school in places where there aren't even the adequate resources to teach a child to read, then by the age of 10, then their chances of high school graduation are drastically reduced. The chances of incarceration are drastically increased. That child will never have a shot at the American dream. So do we not have a moral and democratic responsibility? Some people would say, no, it's their parents. No, that's actually not what this country was founded to be. And that's really the contest that we're dealing with. By the way, may I say something to you about your continually repeating that you're forming your political identity? No, your political identity is very much of the zeitgeist of this moment. You and I were talking before we came on. Your uncle and I grew up at a time when there were political identities and political silos that were worth committing to. Everything's blown up now. Everything's much more fluid. Well, that makes sense, but then this also makes sense. You're really in the zeitgeist of the political identity. Your political identity should be you're an American. Your political identity should be I'm listening to everybody. Your political identity is, and two things can be true at the same time, including the fact that you can listen to the value of what someone has to say. For instance, you were talking about Vivek. Mm-hmm. Well, some of that stuff, yeah. And then when it comes to policy, no. So I think you speak of yourself like you're on a journey somewhere. I think you're at a destination more than you know. And I say that as someone who has been interviewed by you. You're doing just fine.
Thank you so much. It's such a fascinating point for us to have ended on, this concept that, what is America all about? Is it private property or is it public good? And that needs an hour into itself. But especially coming from law school where you study property law and you go, that's where I'm coming from. In recent years, I go, oh, this is how our system works. But it's not how our system works. It's how property law works.
It's like when people say this country should be run like a business. No, this country should be run like a family. First, are the children healthy? Mm-hmm. Are the children getting educated? Is everybody okay in the house? Does the rent matter? Does the house matter? Absolutely, but you don't put that before your children. Right. You don't put that before the safety and the health of the people in the house.
Yeah, and it's just really interesting to me how you answered a question that I wasn't even smart enough to put down in my notes, but is one that I ask all the time on X, and is foundational, obviously, is what is the proper role of government? And you answered, you said it's the broker between those two forces. It's not to choose one force and say one force is better than the other, so go in that direction.
No, this is the deal. Somebody says, I want to start a factory. It is the government's role to say, great, you're going to create a product that can help the community. You're going to create jobs for people. Good on you. But no, you can't spew toxins into the river.
Right.
No, you can't lack safety standards for your workers. No, you can't cause an environmental breakdown. It's both and. That's why even hearing Trump now, we're going to get rid of all those regulations. Their whole, we're going to get rid of these job killing regulations. That started with Reagan. Those quote unquote job killing. First of all, they're not job killing because you need to hire people to make sure that you adhere to the regulations. But those quote unquote job killing regulations are safety regulations. They are health regulations. They are environmental regulations. So yes, you want people to do business, and yes, you want to take care of the common good. In a healthy economy and a healthy society, it's win-win.
Right.
It's both and.
Right.
That's why in some of the European, particularly Scandinavian, you have these hybrid economies. Some socialist elements, some capitalist elements. You think people in Norway don't get rich? I assure you they do.
Right.
But there's also universal health care, educational opportunities, childcare opportunities way beyond what we have here.
Yeah. Well,
you try
look,
to do
I mean,
anything good these days, and those people just call you a socialist. But that goes all the way back to FDR and Truman, and just don't buy it. It's so silly.
Yeah. I guess to that point, and to wrap it up, obviously want to be mindful of your time. And I don't want to say anything that might screw up what we've done so far. You know, this idea that everything is socialist. Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but well, anyway, I lost what I thought. Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was going to say other than, oh yeah, got it. Sorry. Maybe I'll edit that. People will listen to this and surely disagree with you. They'll say, "Hey, I'm a right-leaning economist, and I don't agree with what Marianne says." But nobody in good faith can disagree with you and say that you're not very knowledgeable, coming from a very good place, and just what can I say? I just think the world of you, and you're the exact type of person I would have dreamed of connecting with through this podcast. I'm looking for thought leaders, and I mean, you are one, and you're not just leading with your vision of what politics should be, but it's so much deeper than that. You're really leading. So this has been an incredible honor for me. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to end also with something about what you just said. Only in a totalitarian society do we all have to think the same way. Nobody has a monopoly on truth. So for that right-leaning economist, I wouldn't necessarily expect them to agree with me. Let's just stop trashing and online bullying and attacking and insulting and assaulting and lying about people because they disagree with us. That's all.
Right.
Let's just show some respect. That's all I think any of us should expect from the public sphere. But we have to return that to the public sphere, that it be an emotionally and psychologically safe space to open your mouth.
Well, I think you're a figure that will only increase over time in terms of importance into that achieving that goal that you just set out. So incredibly honored. Thank you, Marianne Williamson.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.